it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question that is talking about how do you deal with a difficult person. When you talk about people who have personality disorders, narcissism, borderline personality disorders, histrionic, these, then you get into the antisocial, the sociopath, and the psychopath. I mean, these can be high functioning individuals that you will encounter in your life. And oftentimes they find themselves at the height of their profession, the height of, their organization, the height of their income. I mean, these are the people who are really want to soar. But however, there is a specific issue with the psychopath, in meaning that they do not have a conscience. They don't have a sense of morality or right or wrong. So imagine that they don't have that sort of moral breaks. So they can just keep going. They don't have a tendency to think about these things. They observe that other people will behave in a specific way, and then they will mimic it as if. And the issue I find with these people is that because of this certain deficit, I feel they have other strengths which overcompensate and then overshadow what you might consider a problem, like a lack of empathy or a lack of conscience, or no integrity, no moral bone in their body. But they cover it up in a very complete way. It's almost as if they can turn on the incinerator and then turn it off very quickly, meaning they can turn on whatever it is that they want to manipulate or con, and then they can turn it off and be another way. So the problem is that oftentimes they come on very strong, and people do have a difficult having a communication with them. In other words, they fear that if they speak up, that this person who is sort of on this sort of grandiose, oftentimes self-inflating ego. So we're talking about, not in the heart space, not in the I am space, that presence. We're talking about this sort of oftentimes grandiose, which is they are not living in the present. They're sort of just always in somewhere else. They're living way in the future, which is very fantasy. And then they sort of pick people up like a magic carpet along with them. If they have, you might call it a sort of a charm, a charisma, a sort of emotional glue that other people just sort of cannot extract themselves. They get very addicted to this person. The sort of thrill, the chill, whatever it is that they get about this person, they get a jolt of something. There's usually something very enigmatic about this person, like a puzzle that does not ever get complete. They always leave a missing part, so you always have to be thinking about them. Not always thinking about them, I would say, sort of not feeling that you have a clear communication channel that is just, where everything is okay. You don't have to worry, freak out, is something miscommunicated. They will create this conflict, or they will create some conflict, but then, of course, try to win over with the strong personality traits, which oftentimes, like we were saying, are very superficial, but I feel is very utilitarian. It's very utilitarian for them to get what they need. It creates just sort of that momentum. And a lot of people then have a difficulty sort of, how do you interface or speak with someone who is like that, who is very fast talking, who is trying to paint this certain picture to you, and it's just something seems a little bit off or too risky. Again, this is on a spectrum. We're not talking about the everyday sort of talk. Should we get this car? Should we get this car? Where there's this open, communication. Should I take this job or that job? I mean, we're talking about something very, very different. We're talking about on another dimension, really. Very, very much so that most people can't comprehend the way they sort of squirrel away. And it's very difficult to have, a clear communication with these people. They will not permit a clear, and, they'll keep changing the markers, changing the rules. You don't know what you're playing with, so you cannot play with these people. It becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult to understand where where you are, and then what their momentum is. In other words, finding where your boundaries are, and then having respect and feeling acknowledged and validated, having that trust, which is just a common sense. But you will not have this experience when you are really sort of battling or embattled in a relationship with someone who is a female psychopath. Because there's a tendency where they're going to shut you down. You cannot speak up. Or they just sort of override your very important statements. They're so glib and superficial that they just don't even get heard. They don't get registered. They don't get validated. And then there is no really foundation. You cannot have a relationship with someone who it is not relating through empathy. It is all a fabrication of these people. So, but and why? This is just what they do. This is how they move through life. They are very much like a tornado, and they will kind of hurt and destroy people in their path. If you are not aligned with their will, they will certainly shut you down and make it very difficult for you to communicate, to get a word in edgewise, to speak up your fear, which is your main concern, and then that ends up getting bottled and compressed. It is very not healthy to hold and bottle a lot of your feelings up. This is your energy in motion, so it'll create certain problems in the body if it's perpetually bottled down. Your energy is meant to flow. You are meant to evolve and grow. This is part of the miracle of life. This is part of the grandeur. I mean, this is to be able to sort of soar and to be in that happy mode. Realize that they will not allow your growth to perpetuate. They will take jealousy. They'll take envy. They will try to sabotage, hurt what is, forthcoming from somebody, just a normal, authentic person. They are callous to this, and oftentimes they will set a trap so that you will fall and look bad. So they have everything to gain then from making you look bad. And then part of it, I think, is that callousness, and it's so, it can be so difficult that you cannot communicate, or there's sort of a feeling of a partial understanding. This is not a good, solid relationship foundation for people. And sometimes they have been with these people for decades. It is just really a difficult situation to untangle yourself from, because I think for a lot of people it becomes very much a lifestyle that they get caught up in, and they might realize then with this type of relationship it is not sustainable. It's like, what is the real thing versus what is not sustainable? So I very much want to emphasize that, and that your growth should be able to be sustainable in the relationship. It shouldn't be, like a battle, because then if not, then you will have a personality conflict where there is, a battle of wills, where, in other words, there is one who's just trying to push others out. It becomes a matter of, you cannot be present, while simultaneously they want you to be in a relationship. You can't be yourself, but they want you to be in a relationship. They cannot, Because of that, they will feign as if they can see you for who you are, but they cannot acknowledge and validate it. They don't have the capacity. So I would think coming out of this, you will gain a lot of emotional intelligence and understand what are the qualities that are happy, supportive, and energetic, and then what is the contrary to that. If you are in a relationship where you find it very difficult to communicate, I think that is one thing the female psychopath will do is just, it's a very one directional relationship. It is really all that you will relate to is all that they desire. It doesn't have anything to do with what you desire. All that they can see is what they desire. So if you are sort of categorized as a hindrance or, secondary supply, in other words, if you don't constantly validate, support, blow up their ego, compliment, adore, just, whatever it is you have to do, to put them at the center, a lot of people end up feeling they sacrifice too much of their self in the process. They are losing their own ground. They're losing their own I am. They're getting swept away in what might feel like a fantasy. And oftentimes, it can feel, I would say the relationships can feel very romantic, very fantasy-like. I mean, like in the movies, just, wow, I can't believe this relationship has happened to me. And so there's, of course, a not wanting to let it go. But when the relationship, you find that they are either very impulsive, doing things, that are violation of the tenets of a committed relationship, you can use that as an understanding that it is okay for you to be able to identify red flags and to bring them up and then to support yourself. I think what happens is that in a relationship with a female psychopath, they are almost unapproachable, almost untouchable. They kind of surround themselves with this very big ego bubble that is, this is the way I am, take it or leave it. So while they ravage through situations, they ravage through a business, they ravage through a company, they corrupt or take over a certain part of a department just the way that they are for whatever it is, getting the money, getting the title on the door, whatever it is, they want to climb to the top. They've got that insatiable need for power and control. So oftentimes disempowering you is a way to, allow them to get where they need. And then so if you just are shut down with no conflict, then you end up sacrificing everything and you never get a chance to regain your voice. You don't feel represented in the relationship. This is, talking about having your long-term goals and knowing a psychopath does not really have that vision. They don't really maintain that per what studies and research say. So realize that if you are experiencing a loss of ground, you're not able to feel that you can hold your ground. This person will not allow you a space of being. We're talking about a real, oftentimes, a very angry or hostile energy that is based on their own sense of injustice that they would then want to. Oftentimes, they're in a bad place, and then they are on these people who are innocent and then are made vulnerable to a point where they cannot stick up for themselves. So they end up just sort of, emotionally sort of purging a lot of this out on other people through violating their boundaries. They don't have that visionary agreement where they can abide by and have commitment and loyalty. This is, being traditional in that way. I would think, it's amazing. I think, it's spelled, I think you would not be able to understand or fathom some of the things that happen. The degree to which people can, fool others. married, double, marriage in two countries, different identities, different driver's license, different social security numbers, different IDs, phones. I mean, you name it. You cannot believe how would somebody be able to juggle this. And how would how would you ever want to refuse such a wonderful dreamy like relationship? I mean, I think dreamy is where a lot of people get in the love bombing, but they can be very irresponsible. In other words, then all of a sudden you just hit a abyss in the relationship. They are just poof gone, and then they have no sort of feeling of like regret or remorse or apology or no discussion, because they do not feel remorse. This is one real different aspect, I would say, one crucial pivotal aspect of the psychopath, the female psychopath, is that they do not feel remorse or regret. They do not feel sorry for hurting somebody. In other words, they can leave somebody wounded and then not feel sort of a guilt or feel bad about it. In fact, I think they take a sense of power or control by beating others down, which just seems is antithesis to me. I mean, I guess I am sensitive and I do have the empathy going, and I am more supportive and protective of others, and observant of that. Hence the channel. But if you have found yourself where you cannot, in a communication with a female, where you cannot feel represented, you cannot get a word out, you cannot feel acknowledged and validated, that this person is sort of hiding in plain sight. This is what they do. There's a parasitic nature where they need to sort of take a host and live off of another. And I think a psychopath will tell you that they need people. And I think when they tell you that, when they give you that psychopath just sort of babble, when they sort of tell you a little bit, they give you those clues, about how they're different. These telltales, sort of dropping these little hints. You'll understand that they, don't feel and process and see things the way that other people do. I would say for them, they look at life as a completely different opportunity, or with a lot of loose restrictions than most people, for their own safety. Laws are there to protect you. Systems are there generally to protect you. But when you're talking about a female psychopath, sometimes, and their communication, you can get very much trapped by them. In other words, you become like a puppet to their commands, and you don't realize that you're losing control. That they're doing things. Just pulling things out. Look at this. Just where you're losing sort of your bearings, I think, is what ends up happening. They end up overriding people, and this is how they get people going. So these people might be great leaders. They might be great teachers. They might be, excellent in oration, or they might have, be very, very advanced in their management. They might be upper management. They very, will rise to the highest of the ranks because they just are able to breeze on through. It's the way that they perceive things. It is their mindset. And they really, part of it, I think, is they're insensitive to the pain of others. And then this becomes a difficult communication problem. So if they are insensitive to your pain, there is an inability then to have a communication on that. So I think especially for a lot of our viewers, these people who find themselves as couples or in other familial relationships, that they end up getting into then a system where they are underrepresented. So it's kind of like their own family becomes wired to disinvest in them. They become the scapegoat. They become the fall guy. They become and so they can use that as a comparison to, like, as a warning or as a leverage point. So they will create, oftentimes, I would say, a divisiveness and an us versus them. And it can be very difficult when you're, I think, in a close relationship, because you don't know kind of where your us really is. If there's false promises, I think this is very typical and very common. And it's very offsetting to people, because then they plan and they have these visions. And what happens if the vision is not, as communicated? What happens now if you find yourself and then you're feeling very limited? You thought there was going to be another outcome. You are then, disappointed in your own restriction, disappointed in what you feel is your own limitation, and that you cannot get beyond it. And, do not try to get beyond it. Realize that you are here for a reason. You are in this space for a reason. You can grow from this point here for a reason, and you can be motivated and enthusiastic for what is right and what is supportive and what is pleasurable to you, and stop being in the place where there is the depletion of that. But sometimes that fantasy is what you can't be sold, the sizzle, you've got to eat the steak. And so I would say the female psychopath, oftentimes that communication becomes marred. You cannot just communicate. It's like you cannot have a discussion. Oftentimes I would think, for the qualities of the relationship, they cannot have that sort of harmony or integration. They have to be separate from. And this is what they, and so it causes a lot of people to feel a sort of disintegration within themselves. So bring that together. Do not be set off by the sly people. You know better. Don't give them, the heat, and realize if you're there and you are finding that you need to communicate, stay strong. Really stand by your feelings. Do not underrepresent yourself, or don't sell yourself short. You are, feeling this and pining. I would say a lot of people have a lot of needs that have been so repressed that it's so bottled up that they can't even loosen it up, the block. So you have to be able to come into a peaceful sense of self that is not all wound up in the fantasy, and that is more rooted and that is more secure in saying, whoa, this did not happen. You said we were going to adopt this cat. We were going to get this dog. We were going to take this trip. We were going to, plan for this family. All these big, important decisions that the female psychopath oftentimes can have a great facility. They can be great talkers. And I think, like, the word glib, it's almost like you can't stop. It's almost like there's no inertia. It's just like, it's like a slick road that if you were to put like just a little piece on it, that it would just keep going. In other words, that you could send something down. It's so slippery. It just has no friction. So there's this like frictionless, I think, experience where you're not represented, and they just sort of leave you with the friction as if it's intended to harm. And don't accept that gift of harm. Don't refuse. No, that is not meant for me. I mean, they will try to dish it up, but they cannot take. So be very well aware of, I would say, the aspect that they cannot understand that you are feeling agony, or you are feeling pain, or you are feeling fear, and they cannot register. And so if your feelings are not validated, you know what, you are going to be, I think, in pain later on down the road, because you're going to be missing something very important to you, where you can come out and sort of live and grow and be happy in life, and that it's okay to live and be fulfilled in this manner, even though it has been shut down, or the fantasy has been sort of wrapped you around in a cocoon. So the cocoon state oftentimes feels very, I think, paralyzing for a lot of people, and they get caught in that analysis paralysis, and they just have trouble thinking. They develop a sort of short-term thought disorder. They can't begin then going after getting really traction for what they want to do, what they want to see, how they want to feel. Getting back to how you want to feel. You want to feel strong, invigorated, breathing clean air, smiling, your body posture, just you're able to stand up. If you are to stand up and straighten up your back, you will immediately feel better. But if you are hunched down, oftentimes by this being battered down by this sort of psychopath, what do we call it? Word salad. Just the whole, just the communication oftentimes that is based on very highly impulsive and thrill-seeking and sort of high-risk behavior that is, violationary and oftentimes makes people uncomfortable. But it's very difficult to speak up and say no. So what I'm emphasizing is that you must take on the strength within your body as it resides in the kinesthetic level, and hold yourself up and allow yourself to be in that neutral state, not judging, not saying this is bad, this is good, but just feeling that strong energy of non-duality and neutrality. Sort of, you might feel it as an indifference, but it has a positive feeling. Oftentimes you need to reignite that positive joy within that has been sort of blown out or extinguished. Where is your oil? Where is your daytime oil? Where's your midnight oil? Where is your happiness oil? Like, where are getting your own gears going again? That is what is important, and you can do that. You can get in, because I would think that the fantasy also coming down from it creates a lot of apathy in people, where they feel helpless, they feel resourceless, they feel beaten down, they feel there is no incentive to get back up, and they don't ever get the positive spark, that divine spark, that miracle where someone says, hey, pick your head up, keep up that walking. Or, like I saw a nice gentleman on a walk today, and he's like, hey, you haven't been, for a couple days. And, it cheered me up. It made me feel like, hey, but I'm going strong today. And he just sort of cheered me on, like an accountability partner, very positive, gentleman. And, you might need an accountability partner. You might need someone to help you get through this, to think and, get yourself structured and moving forward. Excuse me, I don't have my 7-Up here. Shoot. Anyway, gang, realize how important it is for you to be able to be and have representation of yourself. If you feel like an apple that has been bit, or like you just have felt that there has been sort of this uncomfortable feeling, and realize, and where does the source of that? And so understand the cause that creates this effect. You do not need to live in this violation energy. You can feel you need to be heard, represented. And make it very simple. In, 5 to 7 words, this, and communicate. If this person, and oftentimes it gets very volatile, where, people have been hurt for a long period of time and they can't tolerate it anymore. So you might, really have an all-out confrontation, where you really need to spew it out and purge it out and get it out of your system. I definitely recommend, bringing your affirmations and getting them out and speaking them out so that you can hear them for yourself. I am unique. I am loving. I am deserving. I am warm. I am affectionate. I am good. I am aware. I am, and then defining yourself by the positive rather than the confusion and then the crazy making of that sort of fantastical thinking that is led by a female psychopath. Back off of that by all means. Hit the reverse, say no thank you, and then move on to more stable and happy and joyful ground. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. And realize sometimes there's a lot of unrealistic expectations that are met by a female psychopath. Do not feel bad if you feel that you can't meet the high expectations of a female psychopath. They are oftentimes unmitigated and they are unattainable. They're just to keep you there, sort of jumping, and then to keep them laughing. This is your buddy, and be strong. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.